All right, so some of the bad news is that for some reason I don't have a digital copy of these notes, so I'm going to kind of tell you where I am, and then you have the notes, I have a paper copy, and then together we're going to get through these. So we're looking at 7.2 growth decay notes, okay? First off, do you see that there are two formulas on this page? There's one on the top and one on the bottom. What do you notice is different between the two formulas? One is a minus, and one is an add. So, guys, you ready? One is a plus, one is a minus. Okay, we're doing growth and decay. Which one do you think is growth? The positive. And which one do you think is decay? The negative. Okay, so let's talk about this formula real quick, and you can see there's little arrows on it. So it says y equals a 1 plus r t, and then there are little arrows saying what does each part mean. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start with the 1. The 1, what we're doing is with growth or decay means we have something and it's going to change. It's either going to get larger or smaller. This 1 right here represents the one that we already have, the first object, okay? So this is kind of like what we have. And then we're going to do something to it. It's either going to get larger or smaller. That's okay back there? Okay. And then this R is going to be our rate. We're going to either add or we're going to subtract. In this case, when we're talking about growth, we're going to add a little bit to it. Okay. That's what that R means. So we have this one thing. We're going to add a little bit to it. So I have a piece of pizza. And I'm going to add, that doesn't make sense. I have money in the bank, and it's going to grow. It's going to get bigger. So I'm going to add like a penny to it, or whatever that rate is. And then the t, what do you think t is? It's the exponent. Why do we usually use the letter t in formulas? Anyone have an idea? Time. Okay. So this is time, meaning how many times are we going to do this? So if I add a penny to your account, and that's kind of like my R, you have your account, which is the one account, and I add a penny to it. You have $1 and I add a penny. How many times are you going to add that penny? That's what that T means. So that time could be actual literally time, or I could say how many times are you doing it? I'm going to add a penny 15 times. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean it's like 1 every second. Okay, this is going to be the start. So this tells me we have one whole part, but this is how many parts do we have? So if I say we have one whole part, but that part is like $500, that's what our A is. Okay, we have 500. One here means one account. How much do we start with? Anyone want to guess what Y is? So after we do all this stuff to it, say again? The total. I'm going to use a different word, but yeah, it's how much we end up with. I like the idea total, but it's kind of the end. After we've done what we're going to do, that's what it's going to do. Okay? Again, this is all for growth because of the plus. We're going to do this. We're going to write the same things on the one on the bottom. It's just decay because it's minus. Instead of adding something every time, I'm going to take a little piece off of it every time. Okay? So let's look at this first example. Unfortunately, I don't have it printed again, but a website has 10,000 registered users in 2012. The number Y of members increased by 20% each year. Write a exponential growth function that represents the number of registered users after T years. So basically, we got to fill out the parts. Do we know? So I'm going to just rewrite this. And we're going to fill in everything we know. So what is that 10,000? What letter up there? It's not the end. They're saying this is how much we have in 2012, and they're going to say something's going to happen to them. It's our A. It's our start. Okay? So our start is 10,000. Okay? The 1 is always going to be a 1 because we're going to say that whole thing. For some odd reason, if you wanted to say, you know what, let's not deal with the whole thing, let's just deal with half of it, that number would change. But that's always going to be a 1. Okay? And then what is 20%? The rate, how much it's going to grow by. Okay? So we're going to add 20%. Now, I'm not going to write 20%. What is 20% as a decimal? Okay, 0.20. So that's what goes here. Do they tell us what our t is? No. Do they tell us what our n value is? Okay, it's saying that we don't know those things. There's our answer. That's it. That's the first part. That's our equation. Part B of this thing says, now what's going to happen? So this is our A. They're going to say, what's going to happen in the year 2020? Now we got to be careful here. I'm not going to put 2020 in for my time. I'm going to put in what? Good. So 2012 is when we started. I'm awful at this, so I'm going to, and it's not that large of a number, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 8. Okay? Sometimes I get confused. So we don't know what y is, but this, all of this is exactly the same, except they say do this 8 times. Let's all put this in the calculator and make sure that we can get the same answer. Have a calculator? Okay. Someone want to do it for me while I'm passing these out? You're welcome. You're welcome. So if this is a growth, what do we expect to happen to the growth? It should get bigger. If it was 10,000, it should get bigger from 10,000. I'm sorry? Got a huge number, you don't feel right about it? Well, it's growing 20%. That's actually quite a bit, but let's see. What do we get? 42,000? Okay. Yeah, so it's growing. 20% is a lot of growth. So 42. Does it say anything about rounding? Nearest 1,000. Okay. So that would be, so I'm going to write what I have on my calculator. Oh my gosh. What's that? So 1,000. So thousands are right here. So I look to the next. I'm going to cut out all of this, but the question is this number going to bump up that? Yep. So I write this as 43,000. Okay. In word problems, you want to have logical answers. So if someone's asking you how much growth they're making this model, then the person wants to know, oh, it's about 43,000. They don't care about exactly how many people. They want to know an estimate. Okay? Any questions on that? Easy peasy strawberry lemonade. So let's look at the next one, and we're just going to kind of go through the super quick. Do this. We already talked about the difference between the two. This is, what did I call this before? Half. Okay, so we have a whole. Okay, what's our A? This is our start. How much is a whole? This is our end. It's our rate. This is how many times, or the time. The only difference here is the negative. The negative tells me that it's going to decrease. Okay, so when we use this formula, so I think on the test, it's not going to tell you whether it's a growth or decay. Okay, so you got to read the question, and it'll say something about, you know, the value is going up. So then that means it's the plus one. Or I bought this car, it's brand new, I love it, it drives super great. The value drops this much every month. So then it's a negative. Looking at the question, first it says write a function. So we have the value of a car, $35,500. It loses 10% of its value each year. Do we know what our Y is? No. Do we know what our A is? What is it? Okay, so we know that our A is what we're starting with. Is that? We're talking about a whole car, so that one's the whole car. Minus, because the value is decreasing by 10%. So what do I write there? 0.10. And do we know what our T is? No. So for the first part where it says just make an equation, okay? What's going on? What happened? Oh. So our T, we don't know, but what we could do is if we wanted to, I could say how much is it in 10 years, 5 years, whatever, and we could go back, we could just keep changing that value. So part B probably is saying, tell me what that value is. So it's saying after 10 years. So basically it's the same thing. And honestly, if I was doing this and I was you on paper, I probably wouldn't even write this down. I would just write down the answer, which is, so a $35,000 car after 10 years, according to this number. Okay, and how does it round? Oh, it doesn't say anything about rounding. Okay, how would you round money, you think? Where's a logical place to round it? I'd say where? Where after the decimal? The 2 spots after the decimal, because we don't have any, we don't do anything with the third number after the decimal. So I got 1,237,8.08462. When we're talking about money, that's 8 cents there. Question is, do we bump that up? Nope. So we're going to just say, we're going to go ahead and, it doesn't tell us where to round, so we're going to just round where we feel like it, and that would be our answer. Okay. So a $35,000 car after 10 years is only worth $12,378.08. Thank you. Okay. So finally, this is the weird thing. So if we go back and we look at these values that we did on this one and the previous one, they're going to ask us what happens right here. Okay? What happens there? So we just toss it in the calculator and we just let it spit out the answer. But what is the answer to that little green circle there? 0.90. So this green circle here is 0.90. Okay? And if we go back to the previous one, what would the green circle be here? Huh? 1.2. Okay? So this is kind of a weird thing, and it's not hard, but if you're not paying attention, it's going to be really confusing. Okay? So I'm going to look. 1.20. Why is that 1.20, and why is this 0.9? Tell me what's going on there. So if I'm adding, then what happens? It's going to be greater than 1. Okay? And if I'm subtracting, it's going to be less than 1. Okay? So that's kind of what's important here. So for these next questions, there's an A, a B, And for some reason, the question's not even on there. And then an A and a B. Okay? So they're going to ask us to change. The first one says, for each rate, okay, tell me what's happening. So go ahead and write this down. This should have been the question. Plus 0.25, nope, not 0.25, I lied. Percent. And this one should have been minus 8%. And this one is 0.88. And this one is 1.43. So we're trying to convert from one way or the other. So this is like the red here is like what we just did. Okay? So what do you think the plus means? It's a growth, right? And the minus means decay. Okay? So both of these are going to be 1 plus 25%. How do I write 25%? 0.25. This one is going to be 1 minus 8%. How do I write 8%? 0.08. Good. Sometimes people get confused and want to call it 0.8. So the answer to this first one is just 1.25. So it's basically asking you what would happen, what's going to happen in the parentheses. Okay? And it's growth because it's saying we have the 1, we're keeping whole thing, the 0.25 is how much it's going to grow. So how about this one? 1 minus 0.08. 0.92. And I can look at this and I can say, oh, that's a decay because it's less than 1. It's going to keep part of the original part. Down here, they're asking you to go backwards. Okay? So what does this mean? That I subtracted something, right? Okay, I subtracted something. So it was 1 minus something that gave me this 0.88. Okay? Not 2, what'd you say? You're 22. It's not 0.22. What is it? 0.12. Okay, right? Because 22 would get us 110. So we could check that, right? We could do 1 minus whatever we think, but it should be 0.12. So what is the answer to this? 12%. Okay? So that thing right there, that's our answer, but we got to change it to a percentage. So they're asking us to go backwards. I can almost look at B. Those ones are the easy ones. 43%, right? Can you do that? 43%. Okay? Because it's 1 plus what gives me 1.43. Well, that's easy. These ones over here make you think a little bit more. That's all they're asking us to do is convert and just kind of quickly see, am I growing or am I decaying? Okay. Oh, I forgot something on part A. What did I forget? Or the blue. It's super important that I include that that's negative. If I don't, then the person's gonna think what? That's growth, right? And I should put on here, just to make it super clear, a positive on that. Phew, I almost messed it up. Okay, so if you want to jump 4.1 stuff because you haven't watched those notes and you don't want to watch the 30-minute notes, which I wouldn't want to if I were you, I would just go on to that 4.2 stuff. And I think you could probably knock out all of 4.2. There's 2 worksheets. You probably finish that before the end of the period. They're not that challenging. What did I say? Huh? 7.2. No, I'm not actually. What's that?